That evening, as I rested next to Richard in the shadows, I pondered Luca's words. And I came to understand that it had been years since anyone had whispered to me that I truly belonged somewhere. He presented himself as Luca, 28, gentle in speech, courteous in a manner I had not encountered in young men before. He claimed to be a photographer, primarily focused on portraits. He sought a fleeting refuge bathed in the warmth of natural light. A friend mentioned that I once taught art and had a sunroom studio that is now gathering dust. I nearly declined. Nearly. Yet there was an authenticity to his smile. And for some inexplicable reason, it had been an eternity since anyone had gazed at me as if they truly perceived my essence. Thus I acquiesced. For the following 3 days, we immersed ourselves in the task of cleaning that studio side by side. The location was imbued with a lingering dustiness, as if it were woven into its very essence. Rows of paint jars, their surfaces hardened with time, tattered rags scattered about, and sketches left in a state of perpetual incompletion. I observed his movements, deliberate, measured, as if he honored the legacy of the surroundings. He posed few inquiries, yet when he did, they carried weight. Have you put down your brush? Or has the world simply grown too noisy? The question lingered in my mind for hours, perhaps a few days. As I rummaged through my belongings, my hand instinctively grasped garments long forgotten, relics of a time when they adorned my frame. Delicate cotton dresses. A pair of earrings I believed to be lost forever. Once more I infused my tea with a splash of lemon. I adorned my toenails with a delicate shade of rose. I didn't do it for him. At the very least, that's what I reassured myself. It's amusing how swiftly a reflection can seem less harsh with the presence of another. Richard, my husband, hardly acknowledged the shift. Each evening he settled into the same chair, perused the identical document, viewed the identical programs. He had ceased to see me long before Luca made his entrance. Seems we were both aware of it. We merely kept it unspoken. One evening, I inquired if he recalled the hue of the dress I donned on our inaugural date. He kept his gaze fixed downward. Crimson. The hue was a deep, resonant blue. Luca inquired whether he might capture the essence of the space through his lens. He mentioned his fascination with observing the movement of light prior to inviting others into his world. I observed him from the threshold, as he meticulously adjusted his lens, awaiting the precise angle. And then he faced me and declared, "You are meant for this light." It was not a mere flirtation. It was far from a compliment. It was a moment of keen observation. Yet my hands trembled for hours afterward. That night, as I lay next to Richard in the enveloping darkness, my mind wandered to Luca's words. And I came to understand that it had been years since anyone had whispered to me that I truly belonged somewhere. I found myself unaccustomed to the weight of gazes upon me. Not quite. Not the sort of gaze that clings, lingers, perceives. As Luca faced me that morning, camera poised, he uttered, "It would be a pleasure to capture your likeness." A chuckle escaped my lips. Instinctively. In a state of disbelief. In a state of retreat. Yet, he did not share in my laughter. He simply lingered, as though I required moments to recall the times I embraced opportunities. In the studio, the morning sun sprawled gracefully across the floor. He had just completed a photo session with a local florist. A woman in her 30s, her wild red curls framing her face, the lingering scent of lavender enveloping her. I offered him tea, as was my customary ritual. Chamomile. 2 sugars, please. With a smile gracing his lips, he lifted his glass, took a sip, and remarked, "Allow me the privilege of capturing your essence through my lens. This is not intended for a project. For my own sake." No. Naturally, I declined. I have reached an age where I feel it may be too late. I don't photograph well. My face holds no intrigue. He gazed at me as if I had just uttered words from a tongue he found utterly implausible. You have truly experienced life. That is what renders you truly beautiful." His voice lacked a certain smoothness. It stumbled slightly on the word beautiful, as though it caught even him off guard. That unsettled me far more than the term itself. That evening I lingered before the mirror. A moment stretched out longer than it had in many months. I slipped on a few scarves, adorned myself with earrings that had lain dormant since my daughter's wedding. Rest eluded me. I found myself pondering the implications of allowing another to witness my true self, unreserved and unapologetic. A Sunday was selected by us. At the zenith of the day, the light bathes everything in its warm embrace. Gentle and uniform, he invited me to take a seat by the window, instructed me to take a breath, to allow my shoulders to unwind, to gaze upon the place I desired. There was an absence of pretense. There shall be no guidance. Simply existing. He offered no compliments. I never claimed to appear youthful. He merely remarked, "In that very spot. That is you. Stay right where you are." Yet I did not. In that instant I sensed a profound embrace. Not merely touched, held. Once it was completed, I lingered in the studio by myself for a time. The illumination transformed. The chair emitted a soft creak as I finally rose to my feet. I gazed through the window, half anticipating the reflection of the woman I once was. Yet she had vanished, and in her stead stood someone gentler, more insightful. Injured indeed, yet unsealed. A few days later, he revealed to me the portrait. It existed in shades of black and white, sunlight streaming in. Without any makeup, I appeared more aged than my inner self suggested. Yet it is also more authentic. I refrained from smiling in the photograph. Yet there lingered a depth within my gaze, an understanding, acknowledgement. It was as though the woman captured in that frame had at last emerged from the shadows, stepping into the light after years of lingering in the background. Without uttering a single word, he placed it in my hands. Yet his eyes, they conveyed it all. That evening, Richard refrained from inquiring about my whereabouts. I overlooked the photo tucked away in my bag. Yet, in solitude, I withdrew it and set it beside my bed. Not out of a desire to recall Luca. Yet, for the first time in many years, I felt a desire to reconnect with my own essence. And that, above all else, filled me with dread. The rain fell steadily that night. A sudden spring storm, the kind that renders everything delicate and fleeting. It's the kind that severs the current, casting the realm into a soft glow of flickering flames, prompting confessions from lips that once held silence. I had reached the age of 61. Yet, for a fleeting few hours, I found myself in a state of blissful oblivion. At approximately 7 p.m., the lights flickered and then vanished, plunging the surroundings into darkness. I ignited 2 candles, filled a glass with wine, and settled by the window, observing the rain cascade down the pane. Then I caught sight of him, Luca, dashing toward the house, a blanket draped over his head. He rapped gently on the kitchen door. His hair cascaded with droplets. Gaze unblinking. Flash a youthful grin. "There's a leak in your studio." I ushered him indoors. He dried his hair with a towel, presented him with a sweatshirt belonging to Richard. It hung loosely on him, and poured a second glass of wine. The kitchen table became our gathering place. Silence reigns. Only the faint tick of the wall clock lingered before it too fell silent. There existed a distinct lack of urgency. Only tranquility, the sort that lingers patiently. He shared with me the story of his mother, how she tended to her garden with bare feet. In her gentle way, she showed him how to uncover the beauty hidden within the overlooked and the forgotten. I mentioned to him that I once dabbled in painting. I ceased when my daughter departed from home. Richard never inquired about my reasons for letting it go. He regarded me, not with sympathy, embraced by warmth. He leaned in and murmured, "You are the type of woman who transforms pain into poetry." Words eluded me. I simply allowed my eyelids to drift shut, and sensed that line nestling into my chest as if it were breath. There are instances when you step into fully aware of their essence, and yet you allowed them to unfold. The kiss unfolded unexpectedly, felt entirely right, felt like a release of breath, as if a presence had lingered, suspended in silence within me for years. His fingers grazed my face as if it were a masterpiece, deliberate, inquisitive, reverent. I remained steadfast, refusing to withdraw. He chose not to remain for the night. He refrained from inquiring. I refrained from making an offer. As he departed, the rain had ceased. I lingered at the threshold, observing him as he receded into the distance, his silhouette dwindling amidst the fog and mire. With a finality that echoed in the silence, I closed the door. I pressed my back against it, and wept bitterly, not due to any sense of regret. Yet I failed to do so. Eventually, I nestled into bed next to Richard. He remained utterly still, never inquired about my whereabouts. I observed him in slumber. This man who once recognized the rhythm of my breath, now remains oblivious to my return, bearing the imprint of another's kiss upon my lips. That night left me feeling anything but youthful. It evoked an emotion that was difficult to articulate, vibrant, here, yearned for. And when you've lingered in the shadows for an eternity, simply that can evoke a sense of absolution. Some sights are destined to remain hidden from our gaze, not due to their incorrectness, yet they remain incomplete, intimate, untamed, unvoiced. At times it is precisely these that reveal the deepest truths. Luca had departed in a flurry that morning. He mentioned it was a family emergency. He left his laptop behind, his spectacles. I informed him that he could return at a later time. I would ensure the studio door remained unlocked. Intrigued, I ventured within. Not distrust, merely the pang of longing for him long after he had departed. I found myself not in pursuit. Indeed, yet the bottom drawer of his workbench remained slightly ajar, and there was a whisper, a subtle urge that compelled me to gaze. Within lay the impressions. A multitude of them. Unfamiliar faces stared back at me. Portraits. Shards of thought. Instances. And then there I was. It was not the one he had bestowed upon me. This one stood apart. I found no reason to smile. My head was turned, eyes gently closed. It felt as though I was attuned to a melody that existed solely for my ears. The light caressed my jaw with such gentleness that it seemed to defy reality. In that still moment I glimpsed something previously unnoticed. His gaze upon me was something to behold, beyond mere observation. Yet it is through the essence of feeling. The photograph bore no signature. It bore no label. Yet it conveyed all the words he had never summoned the courage to utter. I lingered in the studio, clutching that image as if time itself had come to a standstill. It transcended mere beauty. Not quite. It revolved around the essence of being there, regarding the act of selection in an instant that remains unseen by all others. I returned the photo to its original place, precisely as I had discovered it. For certain truths, the walls are not their rightful place. On that particular night, Richard made his way into the kitchen. He never engaged in that, not while I was completing the dishes. He rested against the counter, his hands tucked into his pockets. He remarked, "You've been different lately." I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. I dried my hands. In what way is it different? At first he remained silent. In a gradual manner. Not in this place. Not quite. Your gait suggests a farewell has already been spoken. He refrained from inquiring about names. He maintained a calm demeanor. There was no accusation made. Yet, an unspoken change occurred between us. The silence, heavy and palpable, had at last made its presence known within the confines of the room. That evening we lay entwined in our solitude, backs pressed together. Silence prevails. There will be no good night. Only a silence that resonated more powerfully than thunder. I kept the photo a secret from him. I never inquired of Luca why he chose not to share it. Yet I was aware. We were both aware. Certain moments are too vivid to be perceived while they're still alive. Some love is destined to dwell solely in the realm between the click of the shutter and the hush of silence. He departed on a Tuesday, calm and composed. There is no conflict. There was no farewell kiss. A simple note. The family emergency had altered their plans. That he would not be making his way back to the studio. He felt a deep sense of gratitude. You reminded me that stillness can resonate as the most profound form of beauty, he penned. That was the moment. And yet, I found myself revisiting that line more often than I ever revisited my vows. The morning following his departure, I stepped into the studio. The morning light retained its golden hue. The lingering scent of paint and pine hung in the air. His prints had vanished. Optical devices. A vessel for warmth and comfort, cradling the rich essence of brewed beans. Yet one thing lingered. A solitary photograph, hidden beneath a floorboard, just loose enough to be lifted. It was the portrait that captured the essence. The one I was never intended to behold. It lingered in his mind unforgotten. He had abandoned it. For my own sake. As the evening unfolded, I found myself seated opposite Richard. We shared a meal, salmon accompanied by roasted potatoes. A meal consumed in the absence of recollection. Once the dishes had been cleared away, I confided in him. Not all things. Not every nuance. Yet that is sufficient. I confided in him that I had been in another place entirely. It is not a location. An individual. That I experienced a sensation I hadn't encountered in decades. That it had come to an end, yet genuine. He paid attention, did not interrupt, did not avert my gaze. Upon my completion, he remarked simply, "I find it difficult to harbor anger towards someone who has returned from the dead." He rose from his seat, made his way to the porch, and settled into a profound silence that lingered for more than an hour. That marked the dawn of an unnamed experience, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps a glimpse of understanding. Time slipped away month by month. The seasons transformed. I returned to the canvas once more. Conducted several classes in the local community. I treated myself to a new set of brushes, my first in 15 years. It became apparent to those around me that my laughter had increased. I chose to don gentler hues, that I remained unperturbed when the term beautiful was uttered in my vicinity. They were left in the dark, unaware of the reasons that eluded them. Yet I did. It resided within the confines of a gallery, 4 towns distant. As I stepped inside, solitude enveloped me. The atmosphere was infused with the scent of new varnish and the promise of possibilities. On the distant wall, a photograph concerning a woman. The head was inclined ever so slightly, gaze averted from the lens, fixed instead on an unseen horizon. The contour of her hand was unmistakable to me. A delicate scar graced her chin. I was the one. Untitled. No caption provided. Before she spoke, I did not reach out to him. Never penned a word. I never faced him again. Certain affections are destined to remain hidden from the gaze of the world, exclusively for the spirit. He returned to me a piece of my soul I hadn't realized was missing. Not fervor, not young, yet the voice. And in exchange, I offered him all the words I had left unspoken. Each glance, with each inhalation, each hush. At the age of 61, he uttered the words that I was beautiful, and I placed my trust in him. Yet what holds greater significance is this: I have come to believe in myself now. And that is the most profound betrayal of all. Not to a spouse, not to a promise, Yet, there lingered the notion that I was devoid of any emotion. There is nothing more to offer. I do indeed. I did indeed. I shall.